IB Nation Sports Talk up and rolling into a brand new week. Man, I tell you what, he's Vince D'Addario. I'm Sean Steyers. Another bowl game coming up this week. Notre Dame, Penn State in the Orange Bowl this Thursday. Vince, it's January 6th, 2025. Notre Dame's getting ready for its 15th game of the season. Postseason game. 15 post. I don't even know what the hell I'm talking about right now.
I don't either.
Postseason game number 3.
Okay.
How you feeling on that?
We're still covering an active season on January 6th.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like
that's what
how
I was trying to say. That's what I was trying to say. The words would not come out.
Oh, I love it. I love it. No, I'm over the moon, man, because there's only 4 teams left, obviously. And, Notre Dame is one of them. And people are talking about how they got a shot at winning the whole thing. Like that has not been Notre Dame's been to the playoff before. They've been to the Final Four. It wasn't like this. Like it just wasn't, right? I mean, it just wasn't. Like Notre Dame would pretty much get the doors blown off of them and they didn't belong and all of those different ideas and things. And that is just not the case. This team is a fighting team, man. They are fighting for everything that they get. And it feels good, man. It just feels good.
Look, I mean, this is like, we talked about this last week and there was at least, a few people who took issue with the BK PTSD talk, like BK PTSD is what it is. It's Brian Kelly post-traumatic stress disorder. Like Notre Dame got to that stage how many times before? And just what you said, couldn't compete on that stage. It's a lot different now, and that's what it's like to think that they're going into their 3rd postseason game. See, I said it. 3rd postseason.
I knew you'd get it.
But it also means that we've just got a new week of fan bases yelling at each other, because that's what this has become. Like, whether it's Twitter trolls working their way into the chat on our shows,
Sean,
the fan base is going back and forth has become a sport unto its own.
Notre Dame has encountered some of the most obnoxious fans possible on this particular run.
I know.
You had IU fans that just didn't really understand what it meant to be successful, so they just were just spouting off at the mouth. They just didn't, it's the whole act like you've been here before. Like they didn't really know how to act. So that was one. Then, of course, you've got Georgia fans. And look, and Georgia fans have every right to be, bodacious or whatever. They can boast all they want because they have a track record, right? But then they just couldn't handle the fact that they got beat, and then the excuses came, and, it is what it is. Right. And now you've got Penn State. And look, man, like, what has Penn State won? That's my thing, right?
Penn State is like that shot of Marcus Freeman on the sideline, like puffing the chest out there, after Jaden Harrison's touchdown. It's like that's Penn State. It's like you're okay, Mr. Proud Nittany Lion with your chest out. It's like, what have you done? What have you done?
Seriously, like what have you done?
It's been longer since you've won anything than Notre Dame.
Thank you. So like that part, honestly, is the most annoying. Like I get it. Like I put up with Georgia fans being surrounded, by the way, by Georgia fans in New Orleans. Like just absolutely, it was like 4-1, 5-1. Walking up and down the street. I mean, it was Georgia fans wall to wall. You put up with it because they've been here before. They know what it takes to win.
They've won championships.
And I have no problem with that.
You basically had to take what, you had to take it until it was over. Right. From Georgia fans. Like we had that Dr. Gonzo in here in our shows last week, and we put up with him
come back, by the way,
all week. Yeah, we haven't seen Dr. Gonzo since Thursday.
Amazing, isn't it?
No, we have not. And by the way, if you're a Penn State fan and you roll into this show this week and you start the trolling, I'm not putting up with the nonsense this week. You're getting banned right away. It's not even going to be a timeout. I'm going full ban. I'm not messing with it this week. I'm not, Dr. Gonzo, we put him in timeout, and
he came back with a vengeance.
He
did settle down a little bit.
He's
Yeah.
semi settled up. This whole fan thing, it's like you're playing a video game, and it's like it's like in like The Last of Us. So I don't know if I never played The Last of Us video game, but they made a TV show on HBO, and it's like one of these zombie shows. Started watching it, and big hit and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, instead of going from town to town encountering a different group of zombies each week, like brain dead zombies, it's like you're rolling week to week, and you just encounter a new group of brain dead fans from these other fan bases, like you just described.
we have some very loyal Ohio State fans that are in our chat, and Archer and Mr. Bucknuts is in there sometimes. And if Notre Dame does what they're supposed to do on Thursday, we're going to get 10 days of Ohio State fans, Sean. And it just
true.
Just line them up, man. Just fan base after fan base after fan base of just some of the most annoying fan bases that there are. Notre Dame has played that school. That's what it feels like up to this point. Like, I mean, maybe because I didn't experience it, but I feel like, Boise State, Arizona State, like, I don't feel like they could have been as annoying as the people that Notre Dame has faced up to this point.
You wouldn't
Maybe
think
I'm
so,
wrong, but man.
But I guess we should, go out and ask, like Penn State people or Texas people. Like Texas fan base, it would be pretty obnoxious as well. I don't know if you've ever encountered some of them.
And there's plenty, but by the way, just to be,
they're like every fan base has.
Yes,
right.
Notre Dame has them too.
Right.
There are plenty of annoying Notre Dame fans out there that I'm sure are jumping into other teams' shows and being just as annoying. I'm sure that's the case. I just never understood that. I really didn't. I didn't really understand, especially talking trash in a show, like in the comments or online or whatever, when you have literally nothing to do with the outcome. Like you have no.
And that's my point. And that's why, like, I don't I see a lot of the Notre Dame fans, like going back and forth. It's like, why do you even engage it? Because none of it has any actual impact on anything that happens in the game. Like, okay, your team is great. The other team thinks their team is great. Like, what? Okay, let's just sit here and argue about it for a week, right? Like, none of it is actually going to impact what happens on the field.
Like, it's one thing for
why even engage with it?
It's one thing for players to talk trash to each other, or even coaches for that matter, because you actually have a say in the outcome. You know what I mean? But like, I just think it's funny when fans talk a bunch of mess because they just have nothing to do with it. But hey, it's why fans are fanatic, I guess.
Elizabeth says one of her reports is a Georgia grad congratulated her and then jumped onto the excuse train. And that
it is.
Yep. Again, like the excuse thing too. It's like, doesn't matter. Like, okay, your quarterback was out. Riley Mills was out. Look at all the starters that Notre Dame is like. Doesn't matter. You still have to line up and play. At this point in the season, everybody's got somebody out, somebody injured, banged up, whatever. It's win or go home. And, it's attrition by game 14.
Yeah.
The excuses don't matter because everybody's got something wrong at that point.
And specific to Georgia, we were told going into the game that Georgia was better off with Gunnar Stockton at quarterback because he was better than Carson Beck, and he added the dimension of his legs, and he did all of these things. But then when they lost because that was the backup quarterback.
Right.
Pick one, like one or the other, and just stick with it. If it was before the game and you're like, well,
look, let's remember,
we
can hate Ohio State all we want, but they won a national championship with a third string quarterback a few years ago, right?
Yep, sure did.
Again, it comes down to how you recruit, how you develop, and
depth.
the whole thing. That's exactly
and
right.
Notre Dame's depth right now is very, very good with all the injuries that they have sustained. So, Georgia fans can say whatever they want, but it wasn't Gunnar Stockton. I just want to say this, go put a little button on the whole Georgia thing. Gunnar Stockton was the highlight for Georgia offensively in this game. He was the highlight. Where would your offense have been without Gunnar Stockton? That's what I want to say. They had 62 yards rushing, right? I mean, where would you be without what he did through the air? So don't blame it on him. Like, it's not his fault that he got strip sacked. That's the left tackle's fault, you know? And it's not his fault that they fumbled on the 10-yard line. That was the running back's fault because of, Notre Dame forced those turnovers. It wasn't like the Navy game where they were just basically handing the ball to Notre Dame.
They didn't lose the game because of Gunnar Stockton.
No. They got outcoached. They got outplayed. You lost. It is what it is. Time to move on and focus on 25 while all the grown-ups get to talk about football.
Tommy says BK PTSD, not real. It's just a mind warp that BK placed y'all under. Snap out of it. Isn't real.
Oh, it's real, but it's over. Like, it is absolutely real, but it got left in Louisiana in his backyard.
Because you should never get to this stage again, like the one that they just were on or the one that they're going into this week, and feel like can't compete in this game. That's BK PTSD. That's where that's a big part of where that whole thing came from. And I mean, I'd never heard of it until I started working here 3 seasons ago. So,
I mean, it's a real thing because Notre Dame was pretty much programmed with the way he programmed them. I mean, his line of thinking and I mean, you can call it excuse making or whatever, like that became the mantra for Notre Dame. And he basically had Notre Dame fans believing that you couldn't win big here. That's what he pushed on all of us. And that was still there until Thursday. So, yeah.
Crash This Train said he heard Gunnar Stockton told that guy to hang out in the white part of the sideline as well. And there's a lot of people who are obviously trying to, one, either blame that guy or two, say that it wasn't a foul. Like, you've been on plenty of sidelines and you know how it is. It's not just you can't be on the white. You have to be off the white, and the official was running on the white. And if he is running on the white and he runs into somebody from your sideline, that's a penalty. There's just
correct
a way around that.
Sometimes they do give a warning, but here's the thing. It wasn't like when
you almost knocked the official unconscious.
Right. and here's the thing. The penalty didn't make it like 1st and 25. It was still 1st and 10.
Yeah.
And Notre Dame forced a field goal. Mm-hmm. So whether you were on the 26-yard line to start that or the 10-yard line to start that, you didn't execute. Like, you still had 1st and 10. It was still a big play. Don't blame that penalty on the fact that you couldn't put it in the end zone. Like, that is the worst excuse I've ever heard, was that particular walk-on kid prevented you from winning the game.
Right.
Nonsense. Absolute nonsense.
Right. Adam with the BK reference, shopping down a different aisle.
Oh, yeah.
We don't have to hear that anymore.
No.
We don't have to hear about how can't recruit and everything else. So good to see Andre. We waved at each other yesterday in Chapel Hill. Andre Tonsel, good to see you too, Andre. And he posted one of those. I had photo bombers from the crowd. I had
saw
Andre on one side and Brendan, I think, on the other side, with all the pictures of press rows. A little like, okay, all right.
So, hey,
but good to see all of them. Those two and Matt had 3 IB guys at least at the game yesterday.
Little, it's what happens when you're famous. Okay, I mean, you gotta.
I don't know about
take it in stride.
One's on the court. They're the famous ones.
That was a heck of a game too, by the way. That was a fun one to watch.
It was.
Fun one to watch.
And,
watching it in the car.
Did you?
Yeah, we're on our way back from a college visit, so I was watching it in the car.
And it was a pretty tough test for him as well, coming out.
Yeah,
because like these last 3 weeks, it's been play, then you have a week, play, then you have a week.
Yeah, it's true.
Between games, the last 3 games, and North Carolina, at least statistically, was the best defensive team in the.
They wouldn't go away either, by the way.
No, they wouldn't.
There were plenty of opportunities where Notre Dame was just hitting threes and doing whatever, and there was plenty of opportunities for North Carolina to just kind of pack it in and be like, "This isn't our day." Mm-hmm. And they kept fighting back. I mean, they got within 7, I think, at one point, but I mean, it was usually around 10. But They wouldn't go away. They were scrappy. And if Notre Dame let up at all, they might have given that one away. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I think it was good that North Carolina didn't go away because Notre Dame kept having to play their game and, that whole thing. But it was a good game. Notre Dame was in control, but that was a good game.
Fighting Irish Media put out a cool little video on social media about it was like Niele Ivey in the locker room, and she was talking about Liza Carlin and Kassan Prosper hit a couple of big threes.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
After they had kind of, Carolina had closed the gap a little bit. And I think between those two, it was like an 8-0 run or something like that. And that really that was like coming down the stretch.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And after that, they never really challenged again. So
no, it was a great game. And by the way, the last home game that I went to, that your family was at as well, noticed in the pregame, video montage where they go over kind of the history of Notre Dame, once Sean Steyer's voice was on that. I don't know if you probably don't get a chance to really hear it because you're probably doing pregame stuff.
Oh, it's very loud.
Okay. Well,
I think it's usually, is it right? It might be like right before the our pregame starts. It seems like it's kind of right around that same time. It's either right before the pregame or as we get into the pregame, like when I'm playing the interview and stuff like that. So I always hear, like all those, you're talking about the calls and
the call of the national championship. Yeah, man. Yeah. I was like, yes, they're finally used it. I love it. Yeah. Love it.
All right. Let's hear some comments from Mr. Freeman.
All right.
On this game this week. Notre Dame, Penn State. He fielded a new round of questions over the weekend at his press conference. We got a Saturday press conference because Saturday is substituting for Monday, of course, this week, since the game is on Thursday, including how you handle the noise that comes with beating a team like Georgia and now moving into the college football playoff semifinals.
Yeah, it's probably louder this week than it's ever been. And I think it's human nature to enjoy people saying good things about you. It's human nature. But we've talked all year about being misfits, right? And that's what we have to continue to be. You have to make the choice to either waste time listening to people tell you how good you are or what the past has been, or you're going to put your time into preparing for this opportunity right in front of us. And that's been my message loud and clear. And we all have to make that choice. It's not the initial thought of daydreaming about the past or an uncertain future. It's that second thought that as soon as you start thinking about the past or what somebody's saying about your future that's uncertain, get back in the moment and put the work in that it takes to get the outcome that you want. Like, don't dream about the outcome. Put the work in. The minute you start dreaming about the outcome, put the work in that it takes to get that. And that's a personal challenge for everybody in our program.
I mean, I know everybody's fired up and, you're in the semifinals and all that different kind of stuff. I would think, though, like Riley Leonard talked about this last week, before the Sugar Bowl, about the fact there's no students on campus right now. So it's like, it's like the noise, like he said, you would always know it's a big game because everyone starts buzzing and talking about it on campus and stuff like that. So I would think that they're at least, shielded off a little bit more than they typically would be if this was like still during, October, November, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, you would hope that they're not just sitting on social media and all that, but I mean, basically right now they're almost like NFL players. You just have football to worry about,
Yeah.
And you just have to worry about the bumps and the bruises and the rehab and practice and, all of those different things. But that's all they got to worry about right now, which I think is probably a welcome situation, for Notre Dame. And I also think the truncated schedule now, it's Thursday to Thursday. So it's just like you said, it's like a normal week, but they don't have the extra days to kind of just sit around and hear the noise, I guess is the best way to put it. They're focused. This day you do this, this day you do this, this day you do this. And I think it's a good place for Notre Dame to be. Absolutely.
I think so as well. I mean, you probably, again, because they had to move the bowl around, and we'll talk about that actually at the start of rapid fire, kind of the time of the game, some interesting comments from the college football playoff executive, I think it's executive director that we'll hear in rapid fire about some of that kind of stuff. But you'd like the extra day. You didn't get the extra day, but it's still, you've got a week between games. That's what you get during the season. Instead of Saturday to Saturday, it's Thursday to Thursday. So there's not a ton of difference really in preparation. They're right in the flow of this.
Yes. Yep.
So.
Yep.
And if you win, you'll get some extra time going into the championship game.
Good point. Yeah, no, I think this team is pretty focused on the task at hand. You know what I mean? I mean, they were celebrating the win down there in New Orleans. There's no doubt about that. But I also feel like they know, and you can tell by their answers, like this isn't it. You know what I mean? There's more that needs to be accomplished. And they're a very focused group right now. That I am not worried about in any way.
Speaking of which, Freeman says his captains are locked in right now as well.
The thing I respect about them most is the way they led when things weren't going so well, right? The ability to stand in front of the team, the ability to say, this is our culture and this is what we're going to do and this is the work we're going to put in. I got a lot of respect for them. I've said this before, but culture's revealed in tough moments. I met with the captains last night about, the plan for this week, and I couldn't even get it out of my mouth before they said, Coach, we have to move forward. We have to move forward. If we didn't listen to this noise before now, why are we changing? And so they're taking the things I've said. Now it's just a strong belief, and they are truly an extension of me in that locker room. And it's great when you have players leading your program.
I think it's got to be a pretty good sign, Vince, that the captains were that locked in that quickly, onto the next one.
No doubt about it. I mean, that, the captains take the personality of the head coach, and then they impart that in personality onto the players. And I think that's one of the main reasons that this team is so focused, is because of the leadership. I mean, look, two of the captains, to my knowledge, off the top of my head, are injured for the season, and they're still out there leading. You know what I mean? They're still in the captains meetings, and they're still, they're still very focused on the task at hand, and that comes from the captains, which comes from Marcus Freeman. I mean, it's a very natural trickle down.
Absolutely. And I mean, like when you just look at the guys, who are the captains, I mean, you're captains for a reason. So it makes sense that they're locked in. And I don't think that they'd be where they are at this point. I don't think they'd be this far along, maybe even in the college football playoff if they didn't have that kind of leadership, not just from Marcus Freeman and his coaching staff, but internally with those group of players as well, because as we've talked about, they've been in playoff mode since week 3.
Exactly.
After Northern Illinois.
100%. And that means something, that means something. They're used to this. This is where they've been.
Yep. Decaf 18 was talking about how Penn State has more prep time. And I saw that, you said they didn't know who they were prepping for, because if you're Penn State, you're sitting there. I mean, you'd probably be leaning your prep a little bit more towards Georgia, wouldn't you? Just based on tradition.
100%. Everybody thinks that Georgia was going to win that game anyway. Yeah. And so they're probably, I mean, if they were prepping for Georgia primarily, which would be silly if they weren't prepping for both, but if they're prepping for Georgia primarily, then all of that prep time, it's a waste. I mean,
my guess is you had one group of analysts putting together some Notre Dame stuff.
But you
had
can't
one
really
group putting together Georgia, but you're not going to
you're
not going to jump full-fledged into it until you know who won the game.
So really the only benefit is, it's a couple of extra days to get healthy, that kind of a thing, which I totally understand. That is a benefit, but that's not why Notre Dame or Penn State is going to win this game. I'm sorry. It's so much bigger than that. Notre Dame and every other college football team in the country is used to playing on one day and then exactly 1 week later playing on that day. And that's exactly what Notre Dame is doing now. So I just
look, we heard last week of the benefit that Kirby Smart had to have a little bit of extra time preparing for Notre Dame. How'd that work out?
Yeah, how'd that work out for him? Yeah, so. Exactly.
So Freeman was also asked about what he learned about Riley Leonard in the Sugar Bowl.
it just, again, confirms what we've all learned about him. He is an ultra competitive individual that finds ways to get his job done. And it's never perfect. But in the most crucial moments, he's going to find a way. And that's through decision making, that's through his legs, that's through having to jump over somebody and flip on his head to get a first down. He's doing exactly what we asked him to do. And he's the first one, just like I would tell you about myself, that wants more. He has more. I have more, and we got to find a way to get more. But he's done a heck of a job, and he just finds a way.
So, Vince, did you find out anything new about Riley Leonard in the Sugar Bowl last week that you didn't already know?
No, I don't think so. I think we all knew that he was a competitor. I think we all knew that he's willing to sacrifice his body. I think we all knew that he's a leader by example and all of that, right? I mean, I don't think I learned anything between the whistle at the beginning of the game and the end of the game. I think he is who we thought he was. You know what I mean? I just that's who Riley Leonard is. Like, if it's not necessarily working through the air, he's going to make it work on the ground, but he's going to find a way to do it. And he did.
I mean, to me, it reminded me a lot of week 1 at Texas A&M.
Sure.
You didn't have to come back this time, but just the way he controlled the game, did what he needed to do, made winning plays when he needed to do. All those different there's really, I mean, that's like the moment has not been too big for Riley Leonard.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
That's the most important thing when you're in this part of the season now, because they're the most important games of the season. So
yeah, completely agree. He's not afraid of the moment. I think that's big. And because he's a good leader, if your leaders aren't afraid of the moment, the rest of the team's not going to be afraid of the moment. And I think, you could say that about Xavier Watts. You can, you could say that about a bunch of different guys on this team who are in a leadership position, but they're not afraid of the moment. And Riley Leonard is chief among those. He's not afraid of the moment. And it's fun to watch, frankly, because you're just like, okay, what is he going to do next?
Yeah.
And you just kind of sit back and get your popcorn and watch it all go down.
Well, because again, look, the running game wasn't quite going the way they needed it to. The offense, basically they were slugging it out at the lines of scrimmage, just like we thought that they would. Two really good, really physical teams were just duking it out, and all of a sudden, here's Riley Leonard with a 30-yard run.
I know, right?
It's like right up the gut too.
He just figures out a way, man.
Yeah.
He just figures out a way.
I like this one from Stymie. I learned from Riley that coach doesn't look for the spotlight with that post-game thing. I'm sure
that was
talking about.
That was a pretty genuine moment between those two. And I thought that was a pretty cool moment. I was sitting right in the front row, so I had a great view of both of their facial expressions while that was going on. And Riley was almost annoyed that Freeman wouldn't take, credit for it.
He's like, all right.
Yeah,
whatever.
Like, okay, him. That like, it was very much like a father-son kind of a moment in my eyes.
But I mean, that's been cool too, because it's not just him. It goes like Sam Hartman last year too, and you think about like the relationship that he's had with both of those,
sure,
transfer quarterbacks coming in. A guy from your former guy Matt Eberflus. I've talked about this before, like when I was watching Hard Knocks, like he would have Caleb Williams, sit in his office and they'd look at film together and stuff like that. But it was like, to me, it just felt more like Matt Eberflus thinks, well, the cameras are here, so I've got to have Caleb Williams in my office so it looks like we're connecting. You know what I mean? Like,
felt forced.
It seemed very forced.
Yeah.
When obviously, when you look at the way that these young guys interact with Marcus Freeman, it's not forced. It's anything but forced.
And I think his relationship with all or a lot of the players is very genuine. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not lip service because he's not saying anything, but it's when he goes around and like greets every player before practice and before games. Like he doesn't. He's not just doing that for the cameras. That's who Marcus Freeman is. He wants to greet every single player in the program every single day. You know what I mean? And those little things create good relationships. And you can tell, like when the seniors are coming out on senior night or senior day, I should say, and they're giving them a hug, like those are genuine hugs. It's not a posed photo op like it was for the last guy. You know what I mean? It's different. It's absolutely different.
Crash This Train said another podcast today had mentioned a possibility of players receiving a fifth year of eligibility over all of college football. Not just college football, but it's college athletics they're looking at. But his question is, would this mean Riley Leonard returns next year? So they are looking at, the NCAA is looking at granting everyone a fifth year of eligibility. And, well, I think NIL has something to do with it.
That's going to throw off all of these teams that just brought in all these recruiting classes based on guys that were leaving. You know what I mean? Like, that's going to mess everything up. And you're going to go to 105, roster limit. That's going to screw everything up.
I know. There's a lot that teams are going to have to juggle if they do.
You know how it goes when you're trying to figure out, okay, what's my roster going to look like? Okay, well, I've got these X guys that are leaving. I know these guys are leaving. Now there's a group of guys, I'm not sure if they're going to come back, that kind of a thing. But that this group is gone. Right. And now
and 5 also turns into 6 if you've got injuries and stuff like that. Just like 4 is 5 now.
So basically, all these guys that exhausted their eligibility now have an opportunity to come back. There's going to be a lot of schools that are going to be like, look, we love you, but we can't keep you. You've got to move on. Like, we don't have the roster space, and do you really want, like, for example, do you really want to incubate CJ Carr another year? I don't think so. Like,
that would be the question that it would be especially if Riley Leonard leads Notre Dame to a national championship and the NCAA grants another year of eligibility. Like I've said before, I think from being ready to play in the NFL, Leonard could use another year of college football. Like, that's a pretty tough decision to make, though, to say we don't want the guy who just led us to a national championship in his 1 year here, because now you're going to go, with a really young and talented type guy. But you're absolutely right. But that's
because then you worry about
those are the kind of decisions that a lot of programs are going to have to make as well.
I think you lose a lot of young guys to the portal if that's the case. I really do. And I'm not saying in particulars or anything like that, but I'm saying in general, if you bring a bunch of guys at the top of your roster back, a lot of the guys at the bottom who kind of had a plan as to how things were going to go, that plan is now destroyed, and you got to wait another year. I just don't know how that helps college football, to be perfectly honest with you. I just don't.
No, I don't either. Because, I was kind of happy that the COVID thing was done.
It was over.
The extra season.
Yes.
And now they might just be sticking with that.
Look, from a parent of a 25 recruit, right? The whole COVID thing. I'm glad my kid wasn't a 24 recruit, because they were still dealing with a lot of the COVID guys still being on the roster. And so there were limited roster spots, going into that season. And so now all those guys are gone, in theory, apparently. And so now, okay, well, there's going to be, X amount of spots open because these guys have to leave. You know what I mean? And so it's tough. I want to know where to sign to make sure that my kid's not going to get screwed by all of this, to be perfectly honest with you.
Right. Yep. Exactly. So Notre Dame did beat Georgia with 90 passing yards from Riley Leonard. You may have heard that one last week. Michigan, of course, won a national championship with a pretty similar formula to what we've seen from Notre Dame. Just ground and pound and grind out wins, dominate the lines of scrimmage. Freeman talked about whether this team can win a title by doing that, grinding out games.
All I know is that this upcoming opponent does a heck of a job on defense, and their offense creates challenge. They run the ball, probably built similar to us in terms of the way they've had success. Maybe don't run the quarterback as much as we have, but I think each week it's what does it take to win, and that was probably the best defense we've seen all year. I don't care about stats. I'm just telling you about personnel and about scheme. That was a really good defense. And so we knew we weren't going to be able to just have 400 yards of offense You know, we had to be really smart. We had to take care of the football. Like, we knew our offense we knew we wanted to run the ball no matter what. And it was a defense that stops the run, but we had to find ways to get positive running yards and rushing yards. And that means even sometimes running Riley. But we had to take care of the football, and they did that. And defensively, we wanted to stop the run. And that's the number one thing we did defensively. We stopped the run. I knew in my heart, I said, okay, passing yards aren't going to beat us this game. It's rushing yards. And we did a really good job defensively doing that. And our special teams were superior. Our special teams was excellent. Mitch was great. And there was positives in all those phases. But that was the formula for that game. We haven't defined yet the keys to victory for this game, but for certain there's going to be something similar to what it was last game versus team.
Marcus Freeman, also not a stat guy. You heard him say there, I don't care about stats. They're just a really good defense. I mean, you know, they were a physical, they were a fast defense, you know, all that different stuff. But, you know, just like we do what it takes to win what's in front of us, to win the game that's in front of us. If that means we need to pass it this time, we're going to pass it this time. If we need to run it more, we're going to run it more. I mean, it doesn't, like, to me, I think that they have shown that they can do a little bit of everything. Like, do you think that they can ride this formula to a national championship?
They absolutely can, because it's just about winning the game. I don't care how ugly the stats look, to be perfectly honest with you. It doesn't matter to me as long as you win the game. And look, everybody acts like this is normal for Riley Leonard is to throw for 90 yards. Like, he's thrown for less than 148 yards twice. Once was against Purdue, once was against Georgia. And for Purdue, he sat out most of the second half. So, you know, is he going to light up the scoreboard? No. But, you know, from a passing standpoint. But again,
sure.
What matters, Sean? It's leading touchdown drives. Like, that's what matters. And that's what he does. He leads touchdown drives. That's all I care about. And at the end of the day, as long as they have more points than Penn State does when the final, you know, when it goes triple zeros, I could care less. I could absolutely care less. Because, like, Tony Rice, when Notre Dame won the national championship, how many yards? I don't even know the answer to this, but, like, how many yards did he average throwing the ball?
Well, I mean, a different
Probably
era, but
many.
I get your point.
But you know what I mean?
I mean, they were still running some triple back then. You know,
right, but he wasn't slinging it all over the yard. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care. They won a national title. I don't care at all. And they've proven they can win that way if they need to.
No, and that's, yeah, I mean, would they have liked to hit a few more passes or, you know, a few more plays in general offensively? Of course they would. But they're also going up, as Marcus Freeman said, a really good defense with some really talented players. I mean, they had, you know, Jalen Walker, you know, Butkus winner, by the way, didn't have a sack in that game. And don't forget, you know, like, when you think about, you know, like that scoring those 17 points in the span of 54 seconds on the game clock at the end of the first half and the beginning of the second half, they were up 13-3, and then they get the Harrison kickoff return, and they're up 20-3 right away to start the second half. So,
correct.
You know, you're up 3 scores with a first-time starting quarterback on the other side. Do you really need Riley Leonard to come out and start slinging the ball all over the field and, you know, risk either incompletions or turnovers or whatever else? You know, of course not, because you're up by 3 scores. And by the way, you've got an elite defense. So, like, if you're up 3 scores with the defense that you've got, like, you don't need to be, you don't even need 100 passing yards, which they showed.
Do you know how many times they threw the ball? Like, Riley Leonard threw the ball in the second half. Do you know how many times?
Off the top of my head, no.
9. That's it.
9 times.
And he
9
was
times.
5 for 9 in the second half for 30 yards. Guess what? It was more than enough. That's all he needed.
Yeah.
That's all he needed.
Yeah.
I mean,
you know, again, because Georgia's chances of getting to 20 points, I mean, look at where they ended up. They didn't come close to 20 points. There were 0 reasons to take any chances.
Correct.
Throwing the ball any more than they did. You know, the fact that they threw it 9 times, that, you know, they made a few completions. They, you know, and they grinded over 7.5 minutes of the clock, gaining what, like 30 yards there in the, you know, in that big drive that ended up in a punt.
And he was 2 of 3 in the fourth quarter. Like, he threw when he had to. He did what he needed to do. That's all I care about, man. That's all I care about. So, yeah, I could care less how many yards he throws for. It doesn't matter to me.
Terry Tyler, I don't know why you're saying this. He says he thinks the car injury is
that's totally
bad and they're not saying anything. I mean, he's been out there in pregame warmups throwing the last few weeks. Like, do you think that if it's worse than they're saying, that he would, one, be out there throwing in any pregame warmups, and two, like, looking as good as he does throwing the ball right now?
I can tell you right now, I was at practice on Sunday. He was throwing the ball the best of all 6 quarterbacks that were out there. So, and it wasn't close. Okay. His arm is just fine. His elbow is just fine. His throwing angle is exactly the way that it was before the injury. He's fine. He's absolutely.
What was 100%. The air quote before the injury?
Well, I'm sorry.
Like, are you trying to say there wasn't an injury?
No, I'm not saying that. He was obviously injured, but there's no injury anymore. Like, people are making it out to be some career-ending deal, and that is not the case in any way, shape, or form. So he's fine. He is fine. I'm telling you, and he will be fine in the spring when he goes and gets the starting job for next year. I'm just saying it. I'm putting it out there.
What did you think of Jeremiah Love? You saw him with the knee brace. Give me your thoughts, because I wasn't able to be there, obviously, because I was in North Carolina yesterday.
He had on a big old clunky knee brace that was bothering him. The brace was bothering him, okay? People are making way too much out of the fact that he was wearing the brace. He went through every drill that all the other running backs went through. And then when he would get done with the drill, he would kind of play with the brace a little bit. You know what I mean? It's a huge clunky brace that he'll never wear in a game.
But he didn't look like he was limping or anything like that any more than usual.
No.
It was just the brace was maybe a little bit more cumbersome than he liked.
Yeah. Is he going to be 100%, on Thursday? Probably not. But I'd still take a 90% Jeremiah Love. You know what I mean? Or an 85% Jeremiah Love. It just... He didn't like the brace. That was very obvious. He did not like wearing that brace. And running backs don't like wearing braces. You don't see them wearing, like, it was one of those kinds with like the hinges on the side and stuff like that. It was like one of the ones that like offensive linemen wear, that's going to prevent the side to side
stability. Yeah.
He'll never wear that in a game. He wears that in practice to prevent any further issues with the knee. He didn't like wearing it. It was very clear. So, no, I did not notice that he was limping. He was probably going 3/4 speed, and he was just playing with the brace a bunch. He didn't like it. So I'm not as bent out of shape as a lot of the media that was,
Okay.
I, mean, I just got a push alert from one of our local media entities. Was like, there's a certain player in a brace, and what does that mean? Irish fans, like, dude, clickbait. Come on, man. Stop.
Man. That's, I don't know. You're going to work that angle leading up to this game. Like,
exactly. I wish I could find that pusher alert. But.
Jesse, I don't know if you saw Jesse's tweet. He told me about it, and I looked at it this way. He's not happy that people are even sharing this video, of Jeremiah. I'm like, look, Notre Dame opened the practice. They could have easily said, okay, we're going to open practice, but you can't shoot any video, can't take any pictures. Right. They didn't want that out there.
Yeah, so, right. That's true. I feel like Notre Dame doesn't have a choice in the playoff. Like, they have to, because we're getting less viewing time than we get normally. And we're only there for 3 periods as opposed to 5.
They can still dictate what images they want.
That's fair. Yeah, that's probably true.
Because they do even say, like, they don't want any sound from.
Oh, I didn't realize that. So, I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah.
But no sound. The Carter kid from Penn State wasn't even at practice when they got their viewing. So would you rather have a Jeremiah Love who's out there doing stuff, or would you rather have your best defensive player and you're not even at practice? You know what I mean? So, I think we're okay.
D
I feel like we can't even touch this one. But you go ahead.
I don't know who it is. So thank you for the super chat, though, D Troll Header.
D Troll's gonna get us in trouble.
I have no idea, so I'm not naming names without even. I don't even know who it is.
Well, pretty much every media outlet that covered that had some sort of video
showing some kind of video,
commenting in a negative way about Jeremiah Love and his brace. I will say that. The push alert.
I mean,
came
do
from
we
the
not
TV
know that he
station.
injured his knee against USC?
Right.
I think we all know that. And
Yeah.
we also know that he was wearing a knee brace the last 2 times that we got to go to practice. None of this is new. He's had a knee brace on.
Right. Exactly.
He wore a knee brace in practice prior to Indiana. He wore a knee brace in practice prior to last week. I know he didn't wear the knee brace against Indiana because I asked him specifically, because like he had the blue tights on, so it was hard to tell. He was not wearing a knee brace that night. I have no idea. I
Right.
couldn't tell from, watching the other night if he had it on or not. I doubt that he did because like you said,
Right.
he doesn't want to wear it if he doesn't have to. So, yeah. But like you said, you wear the brace in practice.
Exactly.
Because you're not gonna make full throttle moves in practice anyway. You're just repping, going through specific plays that you're going to run and things like that. You're not as a running back doing any of those things at 100% full speed anyway. So you're keeping yourself from re-aggravating it so that when you get out there Thursday night, it's as close to 100% as you can get.
Right.
So. Vince, are you ready for rapid fire?
I'm always ready for rapid fire. Let's go.
Fill in the blank. Marcus Freeman's contract extension looks blank today.
Looks like a heck of a deal, baby. Looks like a heck of a deal right now. That's what it looks like, because he probably could have commanded some more money on that contract extension at this point. But I'm happy they did it when they did it, so it's not hanging over and and all of that kind of thing. But it's looking like a good deal to me.
We've got good. We've got fantastic. I mean, it's looking pretty genius, like from the Notre Dame perspective. I think you're right, because there were some who were like, well, why are you doing it now? Make him prove that he can win playoff games. Yeah. Well, if you had waited, I think the price is probably going up even more at this point. Again, it was a little bit of a, who's holding the hands of poker? So to me, it's like, it's genius. It's you probably got a pretty good discount if you're Notre Dame. The timing was just right. Just like we said, like he had leverage at the time because of the fact that Ryan Day also hadn't won a playoff game to that point. And now, Ryan Day has obviously, acquitted himself pretty well, I guess, with how Ohio State's performed in these first 2 games. But like the timing was right, and I think it was a great move by Notre Dame to go ahead and get it done and lock him up, and it's looking like a really good move right now.
No doubt.
And look, I don't think he was going to hold out for the last dollar anyway. He showed that getting his assistants taken care of, making sure that other things were taken care of was also a big part of that. But he also got paid pretty well when it was all said and done, according to the reports.
No doubt.
So sports media reporter John Orand hosts a media podcast called The Varsity. He had college football playoff executive director Rich Clark as a guest this past weekend. And Clark talked about how they came to the decision to have last Thursday's Sugar Bowl kick off at 4:00 Eastern time, 3:00 Central time, after they obviously had to push it back a day from New Year's Day to January 2nd.
I was on the phone all day and meeting with people and just finding out where everybody was with the situation, what their interests were. And then you just try to balance the interest of everyone, but knowing who the priority was. Really, the priority was the city of New Orleans and the victims, to make sure that we did it the right way. But ESPN was amazing. They, of course, they wanted the game to be at prime time because it was going to be an outstanding game, but they also knew what was really important here. And there was no pushback when we said we wanted to do it at 3. I mean, they let us know that they would prefer to do it at 8, but when we explained our rationale for doing it at 3, no pushback. And they were just amazing partners. So I'm really grateful to them. And then, of course, the coaches, they wanted the game at, the athletic directors and coaches wanted the game at 1. It was really impossible for us to do that because of the operations within the stadium. They just couldn't get the security perimeter in and all the operations up and running by that time. But we pushed it to 3. And they said, if you give us 2 more hours, we can have it up by 3. How does that work? We took it, obviously. So it was just a matter of really working with everybody, understanding everybody's interest and the limiting factors, and then finding the solution that as closely as possible met everyone's needs, but really, again, focusing on the security of the situation and the victims of the attack.
So again, that's Rich Clark. He's the executive director of the college football playoff. And I should mention, he played football at Air Force and just recently retired from the Air Force. He was a general in the Air Force before he was retired.
Really?
He got hired, to run the
wow. So he knows how to run things.
Yeah, he's run things, logistics, right? So, so there are plenty of people, Vince, who weren't happy with the afternoon kickoff time last Thursday. Are you satisfied with that explanation that Clark gave?
I think it's a great explanation, to be perfectly honest with you. I was not in any way surprised that they moved it to the afternoon for a multitude of reasons, and one of which he didn't even mention. Now he mentioned that they talked to all parties involved.
Well, I could have let that go for about like an extra 3 to 5 minutes, I think, because there was like even more before that, but I felt like that kind of boiled.
Oh, no, for sure.
Bit.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But part of it was the teams. They wanted to get the game done and then get home. I mean,
exactly.
That's why
they wanted it as early as possible so they could get out of town because of the fact that they did lose a day.
Right. So I totally get that from a team standpoint, right? And the only reason the game was at 8:45 in the first place, you and I talked about it on the show, was because of the Rose Bowl and having to see the sunset at the beginning of the fourth quarter and all that nonsense. So I assumed it wouldn't just be pushed 24 hours, that it was going to be a little bit earlier. Now, when he talks about the city of New Orleans, now that makes perfect sense because by dusk, the police and the law enforcement within the city was out in force, right? And they needed to be at the game, and they couldn't be in both places at once. And so that's why having the game during the daytime and then moving all of them out into the city made sense. You know what I mean? And I will say this, it's kind of a tangent, but we got into town on the 30th, and the police presence at every single corner down Canal Street into the French Quarter had police. They were everywhere. They were absolutely everywhere. And that was on the 30th. And so the 31st was very similar. And then obviously it got bigger once, the tragedy occurred and all of that. I mean, they were checking every car that came into the stadium with dogs. You know what I mean? Like the security was heightened. And in order to do that, you need manpower. And so if you're going to pull them off the street, it's better to do it in the daytime than at nighttime. So that made perfect sense.
Yeah, I saw someone say that, I think it was John said that there was another bowl game. The Gator Bowl was also that day. And that was, I think,
was
at 8
in evening or
something.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's when they ended up kicking it off. I think they might have changed it a little. Look, if ESPN had its way and Notre Dame and Georgia kicked off in primetime, they obviously would have changed the game.
Well, they said they wanted it that way.
Like the Gator Bowl would have been the sacrificial lamb.
Oh, yeah.
In that instance. But you're absolutely right. That was part of the compromise was they needed to, those teams needed at least a little bit of extra time because if they don't kick off in the afternoon, like Notre Dame is getting back to campus probably around 3 a.m., maybe 4 a.m., something like that. By the time everything is said and done, after a prime time 8:45 game.
Yeah.
So I think it all worked out pretty well.
And
I know a lot of people weren't happy because you had to go back to work on January 2nd. January 1st is the holiday, so people had to go back to work and. So you obviously lost some viewership and stuff like that. But I think you obviously had to, as he said, New Orleans was the priority in this whole thing, and everybody else was kind of able to make it work all the way around.
I have a feeling that if you really wanted to see the game, you saw the game. Like I just if it was that important to you, take a half day. You know what I mean? Or you talk to your boss about coming in an hour early or leaving an hour early. There's ways to. Lessen the inconvenience, which is what that was. Believe me, everybody that was in town for the game were completely inconvenienced as well. And nobody was complaining. You did it. And you focused on, making sure that they could get the game in. Because they were talking about canceling the game for a while. It's like, okay, How do you do that?
What would have happened then? Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So
Exactly.
you be flexible. That's what you do. You be flexible in moments like that. And you miss a food tour. Like, that's how you be flexible.
If you're Vince, you missed the food tour.
You missed the food tour. God.
So SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey also asked the CFP to have the Orange Bowl and Cotton Bowls swap days this week to give Notre Dame some time, since Penn State did play on New Year's Eve, and then Notre Dame, of course, played 2 days later in their quarterfinal games. Here's what Clark said about why that was not feasible, to flip-flop the Cotton Bowl and the Orange Bowl.
He absolutely approached me and asked about flip-flop in the Orange Bowl and the Cotton Bowl, because that would give Notre Dame back the day that they lost. And we actually looked at it because it makes good sense. But in the end, the logistics of this were going to be so dramatic. I mean, both for the Cotton Bowl and the Orange Bowl, to switch those days was going to be a very heavy lift just logistically to do that. Then you talk about Ohio State and Texas, what they would have to do really to make the adjustments, because they're already on a schedule. So it would have been a bit of a disruption for both of those teams as well. And then the fans that have already bought tickets, that have already plane tickets, hotel rooms and reservations and game tickets, the overall disruption of that was going to be really hard. And to be honest, that's where we came up with the 3:00 start time for the game, because that was the athletic directors, Josh Brooks from Georgia and Pete Bavacqua from Notre Dame, both had the idea of starting the game earlier if we couldn't flip-flop, to give one of them that extra day back. And starting the game at 3:00 versus 8:00 really made a big difference to them, because now their teams are getting home late night rather than early morning the next day, which gives them some of that time back. It wasn't a complete recovery of the day, but it helped make up some of the difference. And it really, I think, kept us from disrupting what was already in place for both of those bowl games. So again, you mentioned all of the competing interests that went into navigating this whole thing, and that was one of them. And I'm hopeful that Notre Dame can recover, get the rest that they need and the preparation time that they need to go into their game full up. But I think we found the best balance that we could.
Yeah. So when you listen to Clark talk about that, Vince, like Stymie is saying, if they would have flip-flopped, that it would have inconvenienced tens of thousands of people, to those games, specifically, as he was referencing, the Ohio State, Texas people who had already booked airfare and hotels. And I'm sure as you found out, or maybe not found out, because, you actually booked, your return flight, for last Friday. So it was supposed to be 2 full days after the game. But a lot of people who were either going to go to the game or cover the game actually had to come home and not even go to the game after they had made the trip down there to New Orleans, because of the fact that the game was moved, because airlines are inflexible and hotels and the whole thing. So you can't just it's not as easy as just saying, well, let's just flip the days, because 2 other, full fan bases had already, bought tickets for everything and made their plans for the other game.
Yeah. I mean,
I guess, are you good with that explanation?
Yeah, I think it makes perfect sense. And like I said, when I was initially, that's not a word. When I was initially thinking about how much time Notre Dame would have in between games, it felt short. But the reality is, it's Thursday to Thursday. It's just like normal. Like that's a normal week. And so that's exactly what these kids are used to. That's exactly what these coaches are used to, is 1 week of prep. And it ends up being exactly that. So I honestly don't think it's that big of a deal. And I think that response is perfectly logical. I also want to throw out there that, yes, Greg Sankey asked them to move it, but that was before the game started. He wasn't looking out for Notre Dame. He was looking out for Georgia. He was not looking out for Notre Dame. I want to be very clear on that. But, the point is, the winner would have had an extra day. So That's why Sankey was.
Don't forget Georgia was playing in that game, an SEC
correct
team.
Yes, that's why he was worried about it. He wouldn't have cared if after the fact.
Right, exactly. All right, so this is Irish defensive coordinator Al Golden talking about Gabe Rubio. This is from before the Sugar Bowl. We didn't get to talk about we didn't get to use this last week because we had such a condensed week and we had so much stuff going on. But obviously, I think it's still pretty good to hear considering the outcome of last week's game.
First of all, Gabe plays with a ruggedness and a high motor. Just the screenplay that he made the other day on the perimeter that forced a 3rd and 3, I think. That's kind of emblematic of who he is as a player, right? So just high motor guy, will turn and dig it out, hoping to get to the ball and make a play. So in that particular instance, he did. So we love Gabe. I mean, he represents a lot of what we're looking for, just tough, rugged, fighter, competitor, and has great size too. So we're excited for his opportunity.
So, Vince, there was a lot of concern, obviously, with Notre Dame's defensive line going into last week's game against Georgia. How different is your concern now compared to a week ago?
I don't think it's much different, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, what they needed him to do, I think he exceeded some expectations to a degree, but he just needed to use his big old body and plug up some space, and he did that, obviously. And he also made some plays, which I was not really necessarily anticipating, right? So I think he played above his skis a little bit, and they're going to need him to continue to do that. I mean, these are going to be one, if not two, really big games, biggest games of his career. He's being counted on, right? I mean, he needs to go in there, plug up the holes, make some plays, and basically just repeat the performance that he had against Georgia. I mean, if Notre Dame repeats the same thing and holds Penn State to 62 yards rushing, that's a good day for Notre Dame, right? And you can chalk it up to the defensive line playing very, very well. So, I was happy with the way he played. I didn't think he was going to play poorly, but he played better than I anticipated.
I mean, I always felt like because of the big body, because of the things that Al Golden was talking about, the ruggedness and the toughness and the size and everything else, like we talked about, he wasn't going to be able to replicate Riley Mills rushing the passer, but that's not really what they needed from him. They just needed him to go up there at the line of scrimmage and be Gabe Rubio, be his physical self. He gave him 35 snaps, which is it's his highest snap total for this entire season. Sure. And PFF had him graded out one of his better overall defensive grades all season as well. So like I was not concerned about Gabe Rubio against the run. It was, if they needed him to be a pass rusher, he wasn't going to be Riley Mills. But I mean, look at the pass rush that they got. They got sacks from RJ Oben, Junior Tuihalamaka, and Donovan Heinisch. That's the first time that trifecta has hit all season long. So they didn't necessarily need Rubio to be a pass rusher. And I think it's going to be kind of more the same this week as well against Penn State because of the way that they play, with a couple 1,000-yard rushers. Like all he needs to do is be physical at the line of scrimmage and give them what they can. So, feel pretty good. So the 4th and 1 play from Notre Dame's own 18-yard line in the Sugar Bowl turned out to be a pretty pivotal play with Marcus Freeman sending the punt team on, then calling them off. He sent the offense on, and of course Georgia's, running their guys on and off and all that different kind of stuff. So Freeman went into some detail of kind of the logistics, the background of that play.
Practiced it to a point where I felt like we couldn't get it wrong. I don't want to go out there and guess. And if it's going to be something that we do, I want to make sure we practice it over and over in the different situations, the different hashes that ball could have been on. And, is it after a timeout or is it, with a 40-second clock or a 25-second clock? We had to practice all those situations. And, then we went out and we executed. You don't always know how the opposing team's going to respond. I didn't know if they were going to call a timeout or, they did a great job. It was actually good for us to see defensively of don't panic, get lined up. They got their 11 guys on the field, and the guy happened to jump off sides, but I thought they did a great job of not panicking, which the whole point of that is to try to get somebody to panic and, maybe call a timeout or do something like that, but they didn't panic, and but we had a plan. We practiced it for many days.
So, Vince, that says blank to you.
It says that Marcus Freeman is good at finding all the ways to manipulate a game, right? The whole point of that was to try to get Kirby Smart to call a timeout.
Right.
And in the post game, Kirby Smart was like, they wanted us to call a timeout, and we didn't. We made a mistake then, and gave him the first down. He goes, but we didn't call a timeout, and that's what they wanted us to do. So, I mean, it was absolutely a game of chess in that moment. And Marcus Freeman, you can tell he's growing as a head coach because he's finding these little spots to force other coaches to do certain things. And you're squeezing the last ounce of water, man, from the whole thing. And it paid off, right? I mean, it absolutely paid off in that moment. And I mean, again, the battle of the headsets went to Marcus Freeman in this one. It just did.
He wins the golden headset for the Sugar Bowl. That's right.
He does.
No, I mean, like, the point that you made, like, he's not just leaving it to chance. I get, like, they're preparing for and taking advantage of every little situation, every little edge they think they can find. It's not that different from the swinging gate play against Indiana. Indiana ended up calling a timeout in that instance. So Freeman comes up with this, and like you said, like that was it was a big when that clock was winding down. Like, I was like, what is going to happen here? Like, is he actually going to snap the ball, or is he going to burn a timeout? It was like a game of chicken, coming down there to the end. But he was trying to force, as you said, Kirby Smart's hand and make him burn a timeout when obviously he needed timeouts because of where they were and how far down they were.
Well, and the week before, he forced Signetti to call a timeout,
right?
At one
with
point
the swinging gate,
exactly. And so I think that they're realizing, okay, well, we can kind of force their hand a little bit. And in that moment, those timeouts were precious to Georgia, right? I mean, I remember leaning over to the guy sitting next to me. I was like, okay, Kirby's got all three of his timeouts. Obviously this is a little earlier. And it's like, okay, when's he going to start using them? And then he instantly took the first one. I was like, okay, the guy answers that question, So, those timeouts were absolutely precious because they were down 2 possessions and they needed to get the ball back and they just weren't able to do it.
Right. No, that's exactly right. But Freeman is, again, the fact that he's preparing for, and he's probably dialing something else up this week, whether it's the exact, it's not going to be the exact kind of thing. Cause that's the other thing is whether it's these fakes or, whatever these plays are, like they've all been a little bit different every time. They've managed to be very creative and come up with different stuff that the other coach hasn't seen and that there's really no way that they can be prepared for. So I just love, again, he's really just his mindset as a head coach. I just feel like it has advanced so much just in the last couple of months, like you've seen him go to another level with some of this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I don't know if you noticed on the TV copy, because I haven't watched the TV copy, to be honest with you, but,
I haven't either because I forgot to record the game.
Well, fair enough. So on the punt, they were moving the line a bunch. They would go one high and then they would go to the other side and they would go to the other side and they were just moving around and just making, Georgia think about what in the world are they doing. And that's all you got to do. You got to make them think a little bit more. You got them. You know what I mean? And that's what Notre Dame's been good at.
Yeah. Couple of different things. Andrew, I've noticed Andrew, you tend to sweat every little thing, every little play, every time the other team's got a player. It's like everybody's got good players, Andrew. We know that.
This is true.
You've got to prep for them. Who's the best tight end Notre Dame has faced this year? This Penn State tight end, Warren, of course, he's talking about, is no joke. He's going to be a problem with his size. Should be interesting how Golden decides to play him.
They're not going to do anything different than they do.
Yeah.
They're not. Because look,
I mean, he'll be a challenge, and he is
Sure.
really good. He is.
Yes, he is.
He's the best tight end that Notre Dame has seen
But
this year. There's not going to be any doubt about that.
all we heard about was how good the Georgia tight ends were in this game coming in. At least that's what I remember hearing. And I don't think they did a whole lot. To be the Delp kid had 2 catches for 18 yards. And I think that was it from the tight ends. So, and we were told that this was going to be a tight end game. It's going to be a tight end game. Look, the kid from Penn State's really, really good. Okay. But Penn State hasn't faced linebackers and safeties like Notre Dame has. So right. I'm not saying they're going to shut him down. You just can't let him beat you.
Probably Ohio State. I mean,
that's fair. Okay.
Let's be fair.
So either one, I don't know what he did against Ohio State because I haven't looked, but
they didn't score an offensive touchdown against Ohio State.
There you go. Yeah. I mean, he's really good. I'm pretty sure he won the award for the best tight end in the country, or he's up for it, or whatever. He's really good.
He's going to be a challenge, but he can't carry the whole thing. And I know they've got a couple of good running backs, and they want to run the ball and all that kind of stuff. But again, like if you look at what Penn State did against Ohio State, that's your comp. In terms of the quality of defense that Penn State is going to face in this game, that's your comp, is what they did against Ohio State. The answer is their offense was not good. Warren, either of the running backs, Aller, none of them were good against Ohio State. So, and again, like Notre Dame's defense is right on that level.
Yeah. So Tyler Warren had 4 catches for 47 yards against Ohio State. And he had 3 carries for 47 yards, which is odd, against Ohio State. Now they put him in, Andrew said that they use him like Notre Dame used to use Mayer. No, not really, because they put him at Wildcat, and they use him in a direct snap scenario. So they use him even more than Notre Dame used Michael Mayer. Okay, so he's
Warren in terms like Warren is twitchier than Michael Mayer.
Absolutely, 100%. So yeah, you circle him on the report, and you play your defense. I mean, you're not going to do anything special. Maybe you bracket him to a degree, that kind of thing. But what keeps the ball out of his hands? Making Drew Aller make decisions he doesn't want to make.
Exactly.
So that's what I would focus on personally.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. So you may have seen by now offensive lineman Pat Coogan's pregame motivational speeches to the Irish O-line over the past few weeks. Here is Marcus Freeman on Pat Coogan.
Which is an unbelievable leader. He is passionate about this place, and he's passionate about that position. He's another guy that we could use as an example, is almost like we did with Junior. That started a year as a backup. He was a returning starter, and to start the season, we felt like what was best for that game was, to have him a backup. And he didn't complain. He just worked. And now, he's in the position he's in, where he's our starting center, and he's just battling and doing a great job, and he's leading a group. I mean, he's a mature individual that there's some young guys in that offensive line room that he is leading, and he's having a major impact on that room, but also our offense.
He's got some mottos too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I got to hear some of these speeches.
Yeah, you need to look at Twitter from this last one.
Yes. So what do you think of Mr. Coogan's speeches, Vince?
I've never been much of a speech guy, especially those kinds of speeches.
Yeah.
Where they're just kind of yelling at me and swearing at me. Like, that never really got me motivated. But if it works for his group, then that's awesome. If they feed off of it, that's awesome. I'd like Pat to hold on to his blocks a little longer and worry about speeches a little less. But that's just me. I'll be the
Feels like they're working though, right?
I guess. I mean,
for
look,
the most part,
battle.
No, I mean, I agree. Like Charlie Weiss used to say it, and like words at some point, like they don't matter once you line up and you start
Right.
slobber knocking and hitting each other in the head and, and everything else, right? Like how much does the motivational speech
Right.
actually mean? I don't know.
Look, if it works, like it works for some people. Like sometimes they just need to get motivated, and sometimes guys just need to get
it's good social media content, though.
Oh yeah, I want to know who takes those videos. Like who gets in the stands right above where the offensive line is? And, like
it's like, are you
those videos
up there with a boom mic?
Yeah, like what's happening here? But I guess I'm not overly surprised that Marcus Freeman had no idea that took place, unless somebody brought it to his attention, like now Eric Hansen has. But yeah, I mean, look, again, if it gets his group motivated and it gets them playing at a higher level, then that's awesome. I don't care what works for you, as long as it works for you. You know what I mean? Everybody gets motivated a different way. Like I was never a guy who sat and listened to music before a game. That motivates a lot of guys. You know what I mean? Cool. That's awesome. I like to watch film before a game. You know what I mean? To remind myself of what I want to do. So everybody's different. So if you need to be yelled at and sworn at.
Now says the speeches aren't for us. Vince has more of a problem with the speeches than I do. But like I'm just saying.
Oh, right. They're not for me.
I can see I'm saying I can see Vince's point, and like how much does it actually matter? But at the same time, like I said, the guys seem to respond to it. He likes it. It's good social media content. They're 20-something years old. As long as you're winning, just keep doing what you're doing.
Hey, I completely agree. Whatever gets you fired up, do it. Absolutely do it. I'm totally cool with that.
Oh, and everybody wants to take their shots at him. David wants to know: was Jason Onye's absence from the team ever explained, or just personal reasons? In terms of the public,
not publicly
explanation, personal reasons is it?
Right. Yep. And that's all you're gonna get.
Yes,
and that's fine because he's entitled to his privacy.
That's right.
So, yeah. I just found out recently, actually, and I was like, okay.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. I'll share with you if you don't know.
No, I know.
Okay.
I've known for a while. So.
I haven't. I didn't know because I'm usually on the outside looking in on a lot of that stuff just because I'm doing other stuff. You know what I mean? But I finally asked and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Because it was something that kept coming up all the time.
Right.
And so, there was a discussion a while back that we had in terms of what exactly it was. So, and just going to have to leave it at personal reasons. That's just it.
Yeah.
Irish Eyes wants to know how you get kickers motivated.
Every kicker is different. The one that lives in my house listens to country music because he learned that from another kicker because it calms him down. Like he wants to be on an even keel. He doesn't want to be all jacked up, for a game. He wants to be, business. So he has like this playlist that he listens to. It's country music, apparently. He never listens to country music either. It's just this kicker, this D1 kicker that he met.
Well, there are other kinds of music that could calm you down as well.
I know. That's what he took it from this kid, and apparently it works for him. So all good.
I feel like with kickers, like as a coach, especially, it's just everything has got to, like most things need to be positive for most guys now anyway. But like for the kickers especially, it's like you've got to do like when it was that Texas-Arizona State game last week. I don't know if you were watching any of that. And the Texas kicker had missed, and old Sark was out there before he was going out for his next one. And he was just, he was laughing and patting him on the head. And then he goes out there and misses
another one. Right off the upright.
And I was saying, it's like old Sark is just trying to inject as much positivity into that brain as he could.
Yep. And maybe that works for that kid. You know what I mean? Like I feel like a lot of kickers, they treat them like pitchers, trying to get a no-hitter. You just kind of ignore them on the end of the bench over there. Don't talk to them. That kind of a thing. I feel like kickers get treated like that an awful lot. But, it's whatever works for you. Like my kid, he likes talking to people on the sidelines, like all the time. So, whatever works for you, that's all that matters.
And if, for a lot of people, like talking is kind of like,
oh, my bad. Sorry, Apple Watch.
Talking is better than, not talking.
Right.
Because you're essentially releasing that tension,
100%.
Like you're letting it out and not letting just all those, thoughts build up in your brain. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So.
All right. Psych 101 is over. That's going to do it for the show tonight.
Hey, sounds good.
All right.
Sounds
I've
good.
got to go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, speaking of the kid that lives in my house, I believe he's announcing his commitment here very, very soon. So there's a lot of people that
I was going to ask you because I've had people ask me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, last I heard, there's been no commitment yet.
There has not been. There has been a silent commitment at this point.
Okay.
And so I think he's going to put it out there tonight. He wanted to talk to his coaches, his high school coaches first, kind of let them know and then put it out there. Look, it's just my kid, but I know people have asked me, so I figure I'll put it out there and just let them know. So, we'll see how it goes.
Coming soon.
Coming soon.
All right.
So there you go.
Sounds good. All right. Well, hit that like button before you leave. We've got 2 more shows before Thursday.
Can't wait.
I like this Thursday thing even better than Friday.
Oh, it's great. It's great.
Because we got the game on Thursday. We've got something to react to on Friday. And then it's golden.
Awesome.
It's golden. By the way, in case you hadn't heard, Notre Dame women's basketball has pushed up their tip time Thursday to 5 o'clock Eastern time against Wake Forest. It's a home game. They were supposed to play at 7. They're going to play at 5 because of the football game at 7:30. So
this is awesome. I'm glad they did that. Allows it because
me too.
I would hate to see, like the women's game not have anybody at it because everybody's watching the football game or whatever the case may be. I would hate for that to happen. So I love that. So that's awesome. And you'll be able to watch the game too.
You got that right. Andre asking how my back is. Chairs at North Carolina, not conducive chairs.
Ouch.
So I was squirrely a little bit. Not as bad as I have been but I was a little squirrely trying to,
Well, the one picture I saw of you online.
That's why you saw those pictures of me standing up. They weren't. That wasn't like during the game. Those were during timeouts. I would stand up and stretch a little bit during timeouts. So, all right, hit the like button before you leave, and we will talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.